So when we enter into now the Matthew 25:13, it's really good for us to go back and see what we were talking about last week. Because if, for me, if I don't connect what we previously did, sometimes it doesn't always have the continuity. And it's difficult when you get this many verses away from the very beginning, from like Matthew 25:1, to see everything that we came through, and then to try to recap it from 25:1 until now. Boy,
True.
it would take an hour or longer to try to highlight just all the verses in between. So we're just going to take a look at what happened last week, so that we can quickly get caught back up to see where this is transferring into now, as to why it was said what is being said, if that makes sense. So the verse in this one is, let me share my screen so that you can see it with me, and then I can go back and forth even with Pashida. So what we're going to be looking at here, this verse this week is, but he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. And, for me, in looking at this particular verse, I remember seeing that and just having like terror strike me. What?
Yeah. Right.
In the lesser narrative, in my spiritual adolescence, this terrified me to see this phrase. And that's why, if we have time today, we'll go into Matthew 7. If not, it'll be next week. Those were like two really strong verses that struck a fear chord in me. And as we were talking earlier, the English narrative very much does that. It holds you into that fear level of like, oh my gosh, Jesus is going to say, depart from me, and so, especially in the Matthew 7 verse, that one always disturbed me. And then also, depending on what religion that you find yourself in, within even the Hebrew roots narrative, they would say, well, you doers of not keeping the Torah, right?
Yeah.
You are the doers of iniquity. And then I will say that I don't know you because you don't keep the Torah. But I see the narrative completely different now.
Right.
Do I believe that there's a lot that's in the Torah? Absolutely. But if you don't have the oral tradition of how to know how to break these words apart and see what's being said, I don't agree with the surface translations.
Right.
Even in Hebrew, I don't agree with them. So, and because spirit, we intuitively know that, right? Intuitively, when we went through Torah, from even in English, or start even looking at it, the surface Hebrew, intuitively, that there's something there, because the spirit tells you that. At least I know that I did when I entered into a Torah mindset with the Hebrew roots and began seeing some of the things and what we were supposed to do and not do. It just didn't sit right. Like my spirit, I was having difficulties with it. So anyway, so in regards to this, where we left off last week was in Janet McGear's work. It said, and now later, those other versions also came and said, our Lord, open for us. So what we were looking at, which we found was very different or from what it was being said, because we we're seeing that it was at the time of the end that this was going to happen for those that are being left behind because they procrastinated. And again, this is talking about the foolish, who are very self-oriented. They want the power for themselves. They want to stay in this lower material world as the rulers, as those ones that have the power over the others, taking their light. And it's getting to the point where they realize that something is happening here. They still want to hold on to the power, but that which they were taking is no longer allowing them to be took from. Those are like, no, you can't take our light anymore. We're making a stand. So now these that are coming, and we were talking about how when they came, they were supposed to bring the Aleph Tav Aleph, but they had the Aleph Tav, they had the language, and they still were holding on to the power of it. They hadn't become unified. They hadn't gone into the oneness principle. It's like, we have the language and we're coming with power, but we're angry. That was part of what we saw that too. And that there was that adversarially, though and against, that was being presented. So they were coming to say, you know, our Lord, but there was something that was adverse against them because it was the exact opposite frequency, which, you know, that makes sense. It doesn't take us too long to figure that out, that there would be an adversarial component that would be coming against them. And that we saw it twice. We saw in the process that it was like, there's an adversarial component here. You are angry. And then it went into their bitterness because they had the marks. They understood mother, they understood father. They were able to see through the golden rule. They felt that they were worthy and deserving because they went through the work, and that they had both of those marks. And they even found power on the inside through the spiritual path. But even though they did, there was still something that was keeping them back. And what we looked at last week is that they were in the bitterness. They were angry because they were still subjugated under Yod He Vav He. And when they responded, and I need to highlight this because then you'll see what the bridegroom's response was back to them. So when they said, we are saying and speaking, it had a fallen noon added to it. It's like, okay, so mother has pierced us, but we're still in the fallen flesh. And it had to do with their anger and their bitterness towards being under the God of this world. And this is what I find fascinating when we look at this, because, you know, in the Christian narrative, you hear that the God of this world is bad, right? You know, the principalities and powers of the air, the God of this world. But again, that's because been an indoctrination, because the God of this world is Yod He Vav He, which we know is and was a pre-incarnate Yeshua Sophia, being the God of this world, the sovereign over this world, that really is the gatekeeper for us being able to get to all source, all father, creator. It's like they're the sovereigns over this world trying to teach us Elohim lower here who forgot who we are. We're like, you know, gotta mature you guys, gotta grow you up. We can't let you leave because you are dangerous. So this is that response. So they're angry and bitter because it shows that they are bitter against what they see the Lord as Yod He Vav He, Yeshua Sophia, as being domineering and maltreating. So this is exactly what a narcissist would think, right? I'm going to project it on somebody else because I can't see it myself. So it's your fault. You are domineering and you are maltreating, and we are bitter towards you because we did everything that you said. But instead of being in humility, they're not. And they're saying, restore us. You are the bad God. You need to restore us, and it's all your fault, kind of thing. And again, we want the staff of authority while we're in in this flesh, in the material world. We want the light back. We want our authority back, and it's your fault. I mean, that's simply what it's saying. And they want, and here's the other part of it. I find this interesting, because the word before, the very last word about with the lamed and the noon, it's open. And we were even talking about the potentiality of opening up the flesh, meaning our DNA, in having the light available, because there, if we remember connecting it to previous verses, their lamp was dimming, their light was dimming, and they want it restored. But there's only so much life force energy in us, because we are dangerous if we haven't gone through the instruction of being able to tame our beast ego nature, walking in meekness, power under control. If we are in that beast ego, we can't have our light source last for hundreds of years because of the damage we would do. So their light force energy is decreasing, and that's why there's the anger and the bitterness, and they want it restored again. But really, the bottom line when we ended with this is that they need to be instructed again how to deal with their fallen flesh, because they refuse to let go of it. They want to be what they see as being top of the food chain, so to speak, in this earth, in the fallen narrative, and they're losing the authority that they had. It's like slipping from their fingertips because everything is changing. totally comprehend that now. And when you can see it from this aspect, it's like, oh my gosh, this was written for us thousands of years ago, but it can't, it's had its place many times, right? Look at 70 AD, look at the destruction of the temple and the powers that be, look at the fall of the Roman Empire. I mean, they say there's nothing new under the sun, and we just keep cycling through, even the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria, and we're back to that same place right now. The exact same place, same players, different faces, different names.
Yeah.
But it's essentially the same thing in where we need to be if we're growing or if we're not, if we're in inclination or declination, evolving or devolving. So now we get to verse 12, and this is the response that is coming back. So, but he answered and said, verily I say unto you, I know you not. The very first word that we see here is the hey vav, and we know that that is in reference to he, she, it is, that kind of thing. But it also means, and we can't lose sight of this, that it also means alas, woe, and behold. So here's the revelation, and you need to connect to it, basically. Hey, here's the revelation. Vav, you need to connect to it. So this is about a revealing. And that makes sense, because even in the book of Revelation, Gileana, it means to uncover that which has been hidden. It's been translated as revelation, and in Greek it's the apocalypse. I mean, that's what this is all about. Behold, the revelation is here, and you need to connect to it because it's not escapable. And then when you look at the next word, Deen, we know that there's two words for now. One is Hasha, the other one is Deen, and that is it right here. And it's but and yet and now. That's the root of this. And we've talked about judges many, many, many times, that the judges are coming back on scene, those who have already self-adjudicated. And we were talking about how the concept of a judge is one who the goal is to bring a pleasant and righteous life to the people. So the judges, when they come back, it's not like a heavy hammer, because, and again, this is inculcation, we've already talked about this before, that in this self-adjudication process, you reap what you sow. There's not, like, if the judges are showing up as a measure standard, they literally don't have to do anything, because this is the time of the revealing. So the work and deed of your hand, as represented by the yod, because that's literally what the yod represents, the work and deed of your hand is going to reveal that which you did or did not do. That's not, it's not like a finger has to point and say, you did this. It's like, no, this is the revealing, hence why it's the hey vav. This is the time of the revealing, and you need to connect to it, because judgment is upon us. But again, it's a reflection of what you have done in the summation total of your journeys thus far to this point. And again, it's always this door going on the inward man, revealing our weak and feeble position so that we have power on the inside through self-adjudication to deal with our fallen flesh. Because really, noon is supposed to lead to life. It's supposed to be the seed of life that produces an heir, H-E-I-R, airship, not error, like a mistake, but to produce an heir and for perpetuity and restoring life. But this self-adjudication in declaring where you are at is going to let people know, and then that's why it leads to the very next word, translated as an answer. But when you look at ana, part of this, especially when you take a look at it through, we'll talk about the Hebrew sense first, because we know that the linear fashion. So if we're taking a look at the culmination of the end of time, the end of this epoch, which is very linear, what have you done with your time? When we look at this, ana, I'll scroll this down a little bit more here. It means to eye or heed, to pay attention to respond, to begin to speak, specifically sing, shout, testify, and announce. So this is like a witness and the testimony of that which has been witnessed. Hence why the hey, the revealing of that which you have done. And this word also means to be humbled, afflicted, occupied, busied, and to be depressed. So again, summation total of what you have done and where you are at in this moment. Because the hay really, and we've shared this before, that the hay was actually what was removed from us. The hay on the suffix side, the revelation of the Father and the Father's teaching went to the hidden place because we weren't spiritually mature for it yet. And so when it's back, then it's really this humbling process to see the power of that which was once hidden that is now being given to us. And when you look at the root of it, you have the Amein, meaning to be able to see, to be empowered on the inside to deal with the fallen flesh through the spiritual path that is going to reveal to you that which you need to pay attention to and to respond to it. Because again, Hebrew and Aramaic are very verb driven. It means you do something with the information. It's not head knowledge. It's all action based, baby. You got to do something with it because change doesn't happen without application. So that's part of it too, is that if the foolish are coming from a place where they want the power, a lot of it is from the Greco-Roman mindset. Because you think about the authority and the rule and the reign of Rome and the stretching tendrils of what Rome's influence has and has been. It really hasn't really died because it's been still stuck up here. The Roman Empire. Well, then look at the Church of Rome and look at even with the presence of the Catholic Church and having their own kingdom, right? Like that whole space of where the Vatican is its own sovereign nation. Just like Washington, D.C. is its own sovereign nation. And I don't know if everybody knows that or not. But then you have that in England as well, with where the palace, they are literally their own kingdom, that they are not subject to the rules everywhere else. And Washington, D.C. is the same way. The Vatican's the same way. So in this situation, what we're looking at here is that this is a response. And when we move it, so again, we went from the linear that we need to see what we need to see to deal with the fallen flesh through the spiritual path. The hay comes to help us, humble us. And it's even through our own afflictions that we get humbled, because again, most of our afflictions happen through the beast ego. We cause our own afflictions, or the others around us that are operating in the beast ego afflict us. But through the spiritual path, this revelation comes and we're supposed to pay attention to it. So now let's transfer it to Aramaic, the divine feminine. This is answering, responding, hearing, listening. So we already know that this is connected to Shema. It's hear intelligently and do so that we can become. And in the Aramaic side, give oneself to and be devoted to. And what changes is it moves from the hay to the olive. So this response is coming from the place of oneness, about being devoted to and giving someone giving themselves over to the oneness principle of uniting and not dividing or separating out, and I have power over you and I'm going to subjugate you. It's like, that's why the wise were saying to the foolish, we don't get it. The teachings have always been here. Why are you not getting this concept? Why must you constantly grasp a hold of the power, subjugate the people, and not realize that we're all part of one humanity? Humans that have different shades of colors, but we're all human here. We're all in this oneness together. And so this response is actually coming from a place where it's a response. This isn't a reaction. This is a response in maturity. Of somebody who has been occupied with and been devoted to the oneness unity principle, because they saw it. They were given the eye to see it. They took the spiritual path and they have oneness. And then again, what I think is interesting, the Nun Aleph means I beseech thee. It's like this response is coming from a loving response. Okay, you're angry and bitter, and I am going to respond to you through love. because I still see you as being one with me. And I'm beseeching you one more time, please, I beseech you, see, find, look, become as one. Again, it's such a hopeful message. It never stops saying the same thing. It never gives up. Love never fails. People might, based on their decisions, but love doesn't.
Yeah.
So remember before in the verse, I was showing you that their response had the fallen noon on the end of it when they began to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this response, there's no noon on the end of this word.
Mm.
So they're responding in bitterness in that fallen flesh.
Mm-hmm.
But this response is coming from where? From mother. Through a humble stance. Speaking and announcing and affirming. Again, to be called. So there's still a call that is always going out. Mother is always going to be coming in the place of humility, in a humble position, not lording over, to say the way of one. I know it's bitter, mar, as in myrrh. I know it's bitter, but you need to go through it. You need to go through and stay with mother in humility and be raised up, because you still are holding on to, and you see it in the next word, that fallen flesh. You still just don't want to give it up. You want to have your power while you're here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also interesting that one of the things that Klein said about this word Amar, even talking about saying it in your heart. So if your heart isn't in it, and we can totally tell that if they're showing up and they still have anger and bitterness, they're saying it in their heart. Their words, if it's coming from a fallen flesh position,
Mm-hmm.
and out of the mouth speaks what's from our heart, even though they can say all the right words, that frequency is still there because it's coming from the place of the heart, and the heart is being revealed. That's, that's what this whole thing is about right now, is revealing the position of your heart. Are you heartless or full of heart and full of love? Because the service to self people totally check out of their heart. They will not allow themselves to feel. Because they can't. Because remember, part of what we were talking about is they have to take responsibility for their bloodshed and what they've done to take the light from as taking. So this is all a hard issue. And so when you look in the next word, again, it's supposed to be a standing lamed, but the hey yod noon is added on the suffix side. So again, so here's mother saying, okay, I'm coming in a humble position. I'm not lording myself over you. You need to go through this bitter water teaching. You need to be lifted up out of your lower flesh, get rid of that beast ego nature, get rid of all of it. But the revelation and really the rebuke is coming from Father, because that's on the suffix side. It's like, so mother's saying it, but the revelation is really revealing, Father's revealing you, because he's the power that reveals that you are in your fallen flesh.
Is that rare that the root is just one letter?
You see that in Aramaic. You don't see it so much in Hebrew, but
Yeah.
you'll see it in Aramaic. I've seen lameds by themselves and the letter bet by itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always found that very fascinating, that in Aramaic, it would be a letter standing alone, but that makes sense, because anything that is standing alone is really talking about sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the lamed, and it totally makes sense. Teaching shepherds, staff of authority, that would be connected to sovereignty. Same thing with bet, in building your temple, building yourself through the 222 path. That is very much a sovereign stance on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So both of those, it would make sense that you're standing alone, because really everything that we're doing is based on what we do individually. It's not what Ken does. Ken can't do things for me. My parents can't do things for me. It's all about us and what we do for ourselves in our choices. It's very individual. So having said that, though, something that I was looking at in this, because the Lamed's standing by itself, I wanted to make sure to bring that forward again, that the Lamed through the constituent letters, Lamed, Med, and Dalet, that make up the Sindel, specific inculcation again, it means the rod of the teacher and authority, to accustom, to learn, learned, studied, put together, compiled, brought together, and connected, to teach, trained, study, and knowledge. There's a lot of information in this one little letter. Crazy. But the base origin, to learn, prick, sting, incite, and goad. So saying all of that, mother in this position is using that staff of authority to come and bring, but it's not just her, because it's mother in a humble position, but it's also father who is being represented here, where this revealing is like, okay, mother and father are both standing here saying, look, look, this was all meant to, but now at this point, you are getting the sting. You are getting the sting of the staff of authority. And we're trying to goad and urge you on, because it's really based in love, because there was no bitterness here. It's not a resh noon. It's not this mournful, pitiful cry at this point of lamenting over your choice. It just is. This is where you're at, and this is what's being revealed to you. I find interesting that the hey yod noon in a Hebrew word just by itself, it is connected to that liquid measurement, a hen, but specifically it's a sixth part of a bat. A bat is a liquid measurement, but bat is also the word for daughter, and it means worthy and deserving. The number 6 is connected to man. That's also connected to fallen man. So a sixth of the worthy and deserving of the bot. And again, this would be a humbling process, because they haven't made that measure completed. They're partial. They're still in that 6 nature. They haven't flipped it to a 9. I was like, well, that is really fascinating to see that, because the revelation of Father's teaching is meant to empower them, to give them the power, Yod, how to deal with their fallen flesh. But they never did it. They're still in a 6 position. They didn't flip it to a 9. So when I was looking at the hay, this was something that I found very interesting, that Ernest Klein helped bring a little bit more clarity to, because again, we don't speak the language and I don't write it. I just know what's being shared with it, just because it's meant to be studied. That when a hay is put on the prefix on the front side of mother, again, for people that don't know, Hebrews from right to left. So the prefix on the right is mother. So if a hay is on the prefix, it makes nouns of individuality. So very specific to you. When the hay is on the suffix side, it's in the collective sense.
Say that one more time.
So the noon on the the hay on the prefix makes a noun into nouns of individuality. Makes them individual. So we know that whenever a letter is added, it makes it a verb, but this is specific something that is individual, that is in a verb sense. So it talks about individuality, and this makes sense because mother is trying to orient you externally of how you're going to operate with other people, how you're going to operate with God, because everything's external. So it's all about you at that point. When it gets to the suffix side with father, and the hay is on the father side, like we see right here, it is used in the collective sense. That was new to me. I was like, oh my gosh, and I've had my Klein's book for a while, but I'm not always, I'm prompted to do what I need to do when I'm preparing. And so today, earlier on today, this part was a new revelation for me. And I went, oh my gosh, because we're talking about the collective consciousness. We're talking about the collective. So mother deals with individually, father's dealing with the collective. So this is talking about that father's revelation is meant for the collective to be empowered to deal with their fallen flesh. Because the aleph is added on the suffix almost all the time in Aramaic. So this totally makes sense, because if the oneness principle is meant for the collective, the revelation of it has to come first
Mm-hmm.
to give us the power to deal with our fallen flesh, the beast ego that says we're separate.
Mm-hmm.
So this revelation is coming to them again, collectively. You're meant to be a collective unit. You want to keep separating and saying, I'm higher than you, and I'm over you, and I have the power, and I'm going to subjugate you. You want your position of power in the fallen material world, and you are not willing to enter into the oneness unity. So that little hey on the suffix side and the prefix, it made so much more sense to me now to see why the teachings are the way they are. That mother is dealing with that individual sense, because when you first come into this world, right, that's how you have to figure out how to navigate it, is through the ego and dealing with the beast ego to tame it. And then Father's revelation is collectively, I'm trying to bring you into unity, the Aleph, unified, Akkad, oneness, united. I and my Father are one. We are all one. So, and then when you look at the constituent letters for the hey, it's a hey Aleph, and it means lo and behold. So again, we have this lo and behold, there was power given to you to deal with your flesh, but you're still choosing to stay in it. You're not wanting to unify. And then I find it interesting. Think about how many times Yeshua would say, Amein, Amein, I say to you. Verily, verily, I say unto you. This time there's only one. It's not Amein, Amein. It's one, just one Amein. And so I was like, well, why is that? Well, mother always presents herself first. And remember that Vav was before the Amar, so it was on the mother's side. So Father is revealing through his teaching, okay, you're taking my power, you want it in the flesh. Mother is the one that's standing up because she is the gatekeeper to the Father, right? Nobody comes to the Father but by me, says Yeshua. So if we want to make this very personal and we want to connect it to Yeshua, Yeshua representing being in the divine masculine as a mother in the linear fashion is now standing up as the groom and saying and declaring through mother, like, there doesn't need to be any more authority here. I am saying to you as their gatekeeper. I am saying to you. And again, we can affirm that because, that's mother right there. Aleph Mem is mother. So when I looked at this, so if we go, let's go into what the foundation is of this word in Hebrew. Because again, linear fashion, that teaching divine masculine before the feminine. So the masculine part of this would be to build up or support, to foster as a parent and or nurse. So again, that makes a lot of sense in the nurturing qualities of mother. To render or be firm or faithful, to trust and believe, to be permanent or quiet, morally to be true or certain, and wants to go to the right hand. So mother is always trying to get us to go to the right hand path. Go to the right hand path. And we remember we talked about the foolish, they went to the left hand path. They went and sought the power first and went into the dark and the hidden so they could be the hidden hand with all the power. So now mother is coming against them because her whole job is to be able to tame them because of that beast ego nature, and they still want to hold on to it. Hence why that noon is on that suffix side. They refuse to get rid of it. So now when you get into, and then when it's written as Amein in Hebrew, it means authentic, dependable, and reliable. So you're supposed to be authentic, dependable, and reliable. But when you look at it on the opposite side, you are authentically in your fallen flesh. It's apparent that you're dependable to be in your fallen flesh, and we can rely on you to be in your fallen flesh. That's mother is saying, declaring that. So you can see it either way. It's either a positive and a negative based upon, and then we're going to go into the divine feminine Aramaic portion. This will make more sense by why I just said that way. So in Aramaic, Amen, verily, also constant, true one, agreement, and assent. So when we look at assent, we also know, and I've shared this before, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but the formation of the Aleph Vav Tav, the very first time Aleph Vav Tav, the very root of it means to assent, to agree, to come. So the Aleph Tav, Aleph Vav Tav, the language agreed to come and present itself here for creation's sake. So assent is the expression of approval or agreement. The word constant means occurring continuously over a period of time. So when I talked about before about the revealing, when the judges show up, it's going to be revealed the work and deed of your hand over a long period of time. Because we are creatures of habit, and we are going to be acting out and doing that which is normal of who we are. You know, we might have a small little shift, but we're always going to fall back into patterns unless we've truly been changed. And so in this sense, they are constantly, as it's been occurring over a period of time, showing that they're in their fallen flesh nature. And they refuse to, because it's a pattern. You know, a sum total of their life is showing that they refuse to get rid of that fallen beast ego nature. They just don't want to do it. And so then I looked at the etymology of constant. I was like, well, let's take a look at this. And you can see how it's connected to the word amen. It's so amazing to see this. Constant means steadfast, resolute, and patient, unshakable, fixed, or firm in the mind. And this is from the 14th century. Also, standing firm, to be stable, steadfast, and faithful, to stand together, with together, to stand or make or be firm, to stand. So that's all of what is the etymology of this constant. So standing together with, firm, stable, steadfast, and faithful, which is the exact part of the root of the word Amein. So it is connected to this. And what are they standing in and making firm in? Their fallen flesh. Over and over again. Because in the Aramaic root is Aleph Mem Nun, means to be consistent, firm, steadfast, faithful, be entrusted with, believe, trust, and entrust. So that's in its static form. So there's still a declaration going out. There's always another opportunity. And so Mother is showing up and saying, you have another opportunity to hear. You have another opportunity to continue to go the right-hand path so we can deal with your fallen flesh. I'm giving you one more chance. Although you may not see it, it's not going to look the way you want it to, but there's always another opportunity for you to rise up. Always. Then, Amen, again, we have the Amar, speaking, saying, and announcing. This now is an is. This isn't the mother in the humility, like there's that I'm so sorry kind of thing. Now it is an is. Here it is. It's going to be declared. This is the way it goes. So I'm not going to go back over to the Amresh because Amar, we've kind of said that many times. But when we get into the I find this fascinating as well, because we've seen the I am principle from the Hebrew. In the Aramaic, the declaration of the pronoun I, ana, is really, I would put the word am in there, I am, but it's really I as one, because it's the Aleph of mother and the Aleph of father with the spiritual path of the spiritual being that is within the center of the two I's of the Alephs. Mother is one, father is one, all unified, and it's the spiritual path that allows us to stand in that I moment as is. So this declaration is one that is coming and is really saying, I am one with mother and I am one with father. That's why I'm speaking this to you. And in the Hebrew, it still has questions. This same word in Hebrew has questions like where from, where, whither, and why. And it also means, now. So there's declarations, like it's like there's a question here, but then there's a declaration. So the question is, I don't understand why, because this has been here all along, but now we have to now I have to declare this to you. Very interesting as well that it's from in the Aramaic, it's a compound meaning. I or we beseech thee, or I and we pray. So there's always that heart that is constantly saying, gosh, I beseech thee. I am praying for thee. I am saying, please enter into the oneness principle. Because the unfortunate part is, just like any narcissist, they cannot see where they are at. They have no ability to see it because they believe that they are in the right. They believe that they are untouchable. They believe that everybody else is wrong, and they project. They are literally unable to see where they're at. And so there's this beseeching of trying to give this information. And from the Hebrew, as ani, it's changed to the aleph. So the aleph nun yod, having power, now has solidified into the oneness. And it's a shortened from Anoki, which also means vertical and perpendicular. So it's interesting because Anoki is one who grasps the power. So the dropping of grasping a hold of the power to just having the power to then just becoming one, you can see the vertical and the perpendicular process of the maturation of getting rid of the things that no longer are serving us because it's not leading to the unified field of oneness and the maturation of it, so that this person, when they're declaring it, has already gone through all of those steps from the spiritual adolescence to the spiritual mature to be able to stand and declare this as I am one. I'm one. And we have that single lamed, but this time we have the kaf yod nun added on the suffix side. So before, because I want to connect this to something here, if this had been kaf vav nun, if it had been kaf vav nun, and there's many times this shows up in Aramaic as kaf vav nun on the suffix side. It means to be set up, to be established, to be firm, to straighten, direct, made straight, put right, and straightened. Was directed an aimer, like in military, he directed. But the Vav isn't there because, again, there's no meekness. There's no power under control. Because, again, it's the grasping a hold of the power while they're in the flesh. Kaf, grasp, yod, power, taking, giving, receiving. It's like it's all about the power play while they're in the fallen flesh. So again, now as the I status is using that lamed as a staff of correction to sting them and say, you are still grabbing after the power.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get to not know or known or recognize. And again, the reason why the not is there is because the not comes against you because it means that you need to be instructed in the way of one, which is the whole principle of what they were saying. They were not willing to connect to it. And so what happens is because the I is coming that has done it, now sees them, is using the rod of correction to kind of prick and sting and goad them, saying you're still trying to grasp a hold of the power. They are now declaring that they are the dal, dalit lamed. You are literally the weak and thin ones, the needy and the poor, and you have become of the weaker. You think you're strong because you're grasping a hold of the power, but technically you're not. Because you need to go through the door of the inward man to get rid of what is holding you back, which is your beast ego nature, because that's what's keeping you weak and feeble. And you need to be instructed in the way of one. So the teaching shepherd of light is going to come, bring the letters of light. Same thing as always, but you haven't learned the oneness principle, so you have to go back through the staff of correction now. And then this is, I think, is interesting too, because this yada is in static form, which means this is supposed to be experiential knowledge, but it's not made as a verb, which means that the I that is making this statement to them never had experiential knowledge or experiential interaction with them. Because the teaching shepherd of light is connected to the groom. Chatan, that brings life, you're going to have to wrestle with. The message for your fallen flesh. It's meant to bring you life, but you want to stay in the darkness. And because there was no wrestling, no interaction with this, there's no experiential knowledge. So because there's no experiential knowledge, because again, yada, again, it's in its static form. Nothing was done with it that would have changed them. This is why they didn't change their position. This is why nothing was changed, because it's the work and the deed of the hand that gives them the ability to know, because we have Yod, Yod Dalet, that leads to the Ain, to be able to see what is necessary, Ain, Yod, Nun, the power that is being given for you to deal with your fallen flesh, but you literally did absolutely nothing with it. But it was there so that you would understand, be made aware of, to be known, but it is going to be evident. It is going to be evident that you did nothing with the experiential knowledge. In other words, knowledge came to you and you didn't do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they had, there would have been more of an expertise there being appointed, and inward formation, inward formation that would have taken place, and it didn't. And that's why that hey above is that it is going to be revealed to you that you only wanted the power while you were in the flesh. Because you didn't do anything through the work and deed of your hand to be able to expose that area and deliver yourself of it. You just refused to do it. So I don't know you because we didn't have that. We didn't have an intimate relationship as we struggled together, as me as the messenger bringing you the message, because you refused to have a relationship with me. Because this is talking about the God of this world, Yeshua, Sophia, aka Yohe Vavhe, that they refused to have a relationship with. Because if they had had a relationship with the seraphic messenger, they would have gone through the proper protocols that have always been here, and they wouldn't be stuck in the position that they are. So they literally refused to have a relationship with Yeshua, Sophia, Yod-He Vav-He, one and the same. They refused it. They did not want to have an intimate relationship with the God of this world. And again, I know that's going to be confusing for people because they think the God of this world is Satan or Lucifer. They don't understand what the adversarial component is, because Yeshua and Sophia, Christos, the anointing, is an adversary if you're not becoming. Right? So then again, we come right more again, I and 2 and 4. So the I knew you not 2 and 4. It's now you have I and I. So you have mother and father that have separated again. So if we take a look at the covenant of the pieces in the macro, because we have 2 words that are a mirror, you have mother over here as Anna, and you have father over here that is Anna, and then you have the word Yada in the middle. So Yod-He, Vav-He, no, knowledge. They're both declaring, I don't know you. We did not have an intimate relationship, experiential knowledge, because you refused. You see that you're not happy. You don't see us properly. You're angry and bitter. And then it's one more time talking to them about instructing that, again, they grasp a hold of the power of this world, of the material realm. And I find it interesting that I'm adding this because I didn't want to say it above, because I wanted to have something to say with this last word. Lamed Kaf by itself means it's inflected, meaning to you or to thee, making it very personal at this point. To you, I'm speaking to you. If you are in the fallen flesh, this is directed directly to you. So this isn't like, so before, when the hay was on the suffix side and it was talking about a collective, Lamed Kaf is very personal and it is targeted. Very direct, which would make sense because this whole message is very personal and direct. Because if we don't see it that way, then we're never going to see that it is the instructions personally for us as these beautiful love letters telling us and sharing with us how to become one, how to grow and mature. And again, had it been a Kaf Vav Nun, it would have meant at the end that they would have been straightened. They have been made straight and put right. But again, they didn't want it. So this was very pointing. So this last word was very directed and pointing that you still are grasping hold of the power in the fallen world. The other part to finish up with this, the Lamed Kaf, we know the word halak. I know you've heard that many times. We've talked about halak.
Mm-hmm.
And the word yelak. So halak means to go, walk, travel, also means to go away, disappear, continue. He went, walked, went away, departed, walked about, proceeded, continued, that kind of thing. Talks about being a traveler, a wanderer, or a flowing course.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the hay is removed. So many times when you see the word halak, you will have the hay removed. So wandering without revelation. And again, because the hay would be on the prefix side, that has to do with what we were talking about nouns of individuality. Meaning, again, like I said, this is very personal and pointed, very, very pointed. But because the hay is missing here from a halak, the way that they would be walking, they are not wanting to make it personal to them, which is the whole thing about what narcissists do. It's never about them. It's about everybody else. And so the hay's not here. So again, it's like they can't receive that this is directed personally, individually at them based on the work and deed of their own hand. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's wow. This is a very stern message.
Mm-hmm.
But it's met with hope, because it's like time and time again, this opportunity is given to you. Now, I wanted to add something that I think is very interesting in this. And this was something I added at the very end too, because I was like meditating on this because of something else I shared in like the premiere video that I shared today earlier, because I wanted to be in the chat room.
Mm-hmm.
There was a word we were talking about, magicians, and how people have a different connotation, especially if you're in the duality or in the religious system, if you're really bound by fear. But the Yachol, Yod Kaf Lamed, which is, if you were to remove the noon, if you just use the Yod Kaf Lamed, it's in there. The gematria is in here. Means to be able and to have power. And this was connected to the etymology of the word magician or magic. And it was connected to the priests that would have the power to be able to assist. And Yachol, or the Yalach, so if the Yod had been on the prefix, it means to carry a burden or to bear a burden. So they don't even have that, but is connected to magic or magician. Now, I found this interesting because it's the same Hebrew word for what they were describing as the root word to magic. So if it's this, I mean, literally same word, same, to be able and to have power. The root, and it's the same root called mag. Mag. Think of MAGA. Think of MAGA. Make America Great Again. It's mag with an aleph. If people don't think that people in power don't have this language, they're mistaken. That is why the hidden hand has this language. And that is why they are of the foolish and tend to be on the narcissistic side, because they know the power in the language. They know exactly what they can do with it to steer people. And so mag, having and be able to, having the power through oneness unity, because the aleph is added on it. So that phrase was being able to have the power as a magician to unify everyone into oneness. That was the whole goal of what that was all about, because of having uniting in one power, singularity. So I am, I'm apolitical. I'm not choosing a side. I'm not saying one way or another, but I am saying that Mag plus the Aleph is having to be able to have the power of oneness, unity, and declaring that. And then you use it for Make America Great Again. But that's not what was the intention through the letters. Through the waters of chaos, I'm going to gather what I need and assemble in order to bring everything into oneness, unity, so that I can control the situation and be able to have that power by everybody agreeing with me. And that is what this is saying. You are still grasping a hold of the power while in the fallen flesh, because those who are in that hidden hand are all service to self. It doesn't matter how you try to dress it up. It doesn't matter, because again, the heart is being revealed. The frequency, it's going to be shown what the work and deed of your hand over a continuous time period. You can't just flip a switch and have it change in a moment. What have you done continuously over your life is going to be revealed, not just a brief moment. What does it look like overall? Because there's the scales, Dean, judging, that are coming to measure us based in what we have done, the summation total of our life's journey, and what is being met in those scales. And the I, Aleph Nun Aleph, is coming to be able to render this decision based upon what you have done. It's not what they've done. They've already done their work. What have you done? Sowing and reaping. It's a very powerful verse. Very, very powerful verse. Sobering, but again, there's always hope.